Good evening, Bill Wadman.
Good evening, Sandy Robertson.
This evening we are speaking of seeing Haptikos,
Haptikos.
which is the ancient Greek for, do you know?
I do not know.
Really? Even with
No,
haptics?
touch.
Yeah, pertaining pertaining to touch.
Okay. See, I got it.
Tactile. Pertaining to the sense of touch would be more accurate, actually. Um,
That's what, yeah, I'll tell you one thing. There's only a few places. I was at the Met the other day, and there's only a few places where somebody with sight disabilities can just touch whatever's in front of them. And they're so marked. But there's only a handful of them that I've ever noticed in the museum.
yep.
These are
Well,
the things I think about because I have a blind niece, and like it's the things you'd like sort of only notice when you have sort of a reason to notice that kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah, I've thought a lot about touch and art. The feeling of wanting to touch as a sighted person as well, somebody who can see in front of them, see the painting on the wall. I still want to touch it.
Especially like a Van Gogh.
Well,
Hmm.
yeah, anything, run your thumb down the zip of the Barnett Newman painting or,
Yeah, I've done it.
yeah, I really do. So anyway, when you hear the noise in the gallery, that's
Yeah.
probably me putting my foot over the line and being incredibly sorely tempted to touch the surface of the painting. It's something that I think a lot of people feel. There's such a temptation to touch when we see. Um, but I've been wondering, you know, what do we actually feel? Like if you sit there now and I sit here now, what are we actually feeling? What are our sensations of touch?
At the moment, I have my butt in the chair, the tops of my toes on the floor, my hands touching this alpaca sweater, right? That kind of thing.
Mm,
But I think we ignore touch a lot of times.
we do, and it seems strange also because, touch is part of the function of the largest organ. You'd think we would be more aware of what we are actually touching, what we
Yeah,
come into
and
contact with.
and certain places more sensitive than others, of course, too.
Hmm. Anyway, what do you feel? Feeling is tactile, yes, but also we have a sense that we are touched. Something touched my heart.
But I guess what is the equivalent of colors in touch? Is it different textures?
I suppose so. It's a wonderful book. It's called The Black Book of Colors, and it's a book about color for visually impaired children. And it's beautiful. I mean, as a sighted person, it looks beautiful, but it's in Braille and it's vivid descriptions, but everything is navigated through touch. So the texture is likened to touch. So it talks about, the kind of grey down of the feather, and you can run your fingers over the Braille for the word descriptor, but you can also run your finger over the embossed surface of the feather.
Yeah.
Um, And I'm sure, again, that this is a kind of convergence of art with science, and someone who understands this in a very physical way, physiological way, would probably be able to explain a lot about it. But it does seem to be that we supplant something that stands alone, touch, with language. We kind of bring the intellect to something that's not intellectual
Right. Yeah.
with touch.
I think we have less of a language with touch in general of how to describe it too.
Mm. And, we think about how often in art we might perceive the artist's hand.
Hmm.
Um, this is a fragment from a coffin. It's nearly 4,000 years old. And I don't know if you can see it very well, but in the surface of the animal skin, the fur,
There's fingerprints.
fingerprints.
Yeah,
So this is at the Fitzwilliam Museum in Cambridge,
that's a good idea.
here in the UK.
Person 2,000 years ago. Good idea.
I know, but also, here we have something that's legacy, but this print, this imprint, what impression does it really make? What does it leave? Is it something that's again this idea of something that's visual? Is it something that's
You got to imagine they wanted, well, it does both have a visual effect, and theoretically, if you touched it, you might be able to feel the ridges depending on what this thing,
but
plaster
do
or
we
whatever is
do we
I guess
get
wood,
a
but
sense of something beyond the touch of it? Because of the touch.
yes, I think there is a definitive texture that sort of likens it to animal skin or whatever it is, which is probably what they were going for, right?
Mm. And so what is touch to the artist? You're a photographer. I mean, to a lesser extent, I'm a photographer. What's touch to us?
Well, it's interesting when you were saying touch of the texture of the work. I kept thinking about the fact that they were probably using some sort of stylus or stick to like do the painting too, and even
Well, this is a reed brush.
oh yeah, you're right. Okay, but you see what I'm saying? But that even holding whatever it is to make the thing was also a tactile feel.
Mm.
Me reaching and picking up wherever my cameras are. What that feels like in my hands, is very touch thing, but like far less tactile than an instrument of writing or something like that.
Mm.
Um,
But when we see something that implies touch, I mean, this is like the sound I see. If we see touch, like I'm looking at a fingerprint on an ancient article,
yeah.
it's so strange that I can, with visual art, I can often bridge the gap between the feeling and the thing. But touch seems to stand alone. I can see that touch has happened, but I don't experience the touch.
You don't look at this and sort of have a direct connection to, okay, the artist could have, I don't know, scraped lines through the thing or something, right? Like, but they chose to imprint fingerprints. Okay.
Hmm.
You don't want to sort of match their fingerprint and imagine what it felt like to do that. Does that like zip line you 4,000 years back to the person who made this?
Yes, but I wonder if it zip lines me back to the person making the thing rather than the person touching it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. No, I would definitely go back to the person who made it, not the person touching it after the fact.
Hmm. We were just saying that in the Met, for example, there's maybe, I guess there's a few things that you can touch. Different places like the Tate Modern do touch tours sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But this is like a specific gallery. It's the Elizabeth Morse Gallery at the Chicago Art Institute.
Yes.
And it was intended initially to enrich the experience of people who had limited vision.
Mm-hmm.
And so the four things that are on display are intended to be touched. That's why they're there. And in itself, it seems like there's something quite worshipful about touching. There's a reverence to touching something that seems, again, maybe even more intense than looking.
Well, especially if these are heads, there's even like the central angle of it. It's just like, if you're with someone you love and you're touching their face or their head, like it, but it's just a bronze version of that or a stone version of that. There's an element of that tactility of that shape has to set things off in people too.
Hmm. I mean, have you ever touched something that just sets you alight?
Yeah. There's a statue in the cemetery that I like to touch.
Mm.
It's of this crazy angel, and the way that like the side of the angel, it's like whoever designed it, whoever the model was, I don't know. It's just like kind of amazing. But yeah.
Well, we have
Although yeah.
no, we have a strange and shifting relationship with touch. We live you and I both, though in different places, do come from what I'd think of as low contact cultures. We're
Yep.
not as prone to touch as
Hmm.
some other cultures around the world. Certainly not in the UK. It's not usual, I would say, in like a white Christian context to in England to hug and kiss and hold hands in the same way it would be somewhere else.
You don't hug people after a wedding, for God's sakes, let alone.
Can't think of anything worse.
But yeah, no, it's true. I mean, there are a lot of places in the world where all of that sort of person to person physical contact is a big part of everything, big part of society.
Sorry about the quality of this image. No,
No, it's just the smoothness of, where is that?
it's the Henry Moore Foundation.
I mean, like that era of sculpture, like that, these bronzes and things that, like, it's all these swooping lines. They almost feel made by a computer nowadays, you know?
Hmm. The potter, Edmund Duval, curated an exhibition at the Moore Foundation that was specific to the sense of touch and the hand as a kind of
Yep.
motif through Moore's work. It was called This Living Hand, the exhibition. And what I love is there's like an introductory video that was released with the launch of the exhibition, and it is Duval in this space with these, totemic sculptures, running his hands freely over the bronze and describing the sense that, there's these unexpected areas of texture where otherwise there might be, the cool smoothness and the difference, the contrasts between surface. And it is a sensual pleasure.
Yeah.
And I think that so often we're disconnected from those things. We're taught that those things are bad or alien. And of course, I'm speaking from the position of touch being benign.
Sure.
And I appreciate that for many people, touch is of violence. Touch is something that's of an aggressor or an aggressive act. But I feel like I need to peel away the layers of these kind of cultural conditions to make touching okay. Obviously, there's people I touch all the time. I, hug my child. I touch my family when I see them to embrace them. I kiss David before, I leave for work in the morning. Constant touching in those intimate domestic spaces. But I'm not saying that I want to fling open my arms and embrace everyone I meet.
It's funny. I hug a half dozen people a day.
Well, I'm wondering about letting go of whatever it is that stops me from doing that.
Is
Although
that is that is that Britishness, or is it something in you specifically?
I think I realize that sometimes there's a lot of transference in touching. Like I
Okay.
do a lot of touching in my other job, not my teaching job, my other work. And touching as part of a kind of performative or transpersonal therapizing within a group, for example. Uh, and I know that touch in those contexts can be really binding, supportive, nurturing, loving. I'm also very aware that in my life I've touched people or people have touched me and it has been unwanted and it has been frightening or it has been of some kind of horror. Mm, and touch is coded, isn't it? There's a lot within it.
Sure.
Touch from somebody that you don't want to touch you
Yeah.
is,
It's interesting not having had any formative experiences that I can remember or know of that were like negative touch experiences. I have far less fear of that than I'm imagining some people who have, you know? It's amazing how like these things can, I don't know, get solidify. You know what I
sure.
mean?
I did an experiment last night with the dialogue group I was working with, and we did this topic. That's why I'm bringing it here this evening to
Yeah.
talk to you about it. Interesting for me doing this one with you because obviously I can't touch you. But in the dialogue group, it was quite a big group last night, and I did ask permission before we started, but the person sitting next to me, I checked, was it okay if I touched them? And they said yes. And so partway through the dialogue, I simply put my fingertip on their arm and we investigated how it made them feel. And it had an arc in it, the response. You know, obviously it's quite strange out of context to be touched and for focus to be in that touch. But after some time, the awkwardness of it left and something else happened. And, you know, the sense of separation between that person and I collapsed. Not just because there was an actual physical link, but something about that physical link meant that we became intensely close. Um, so looking at this in a therapeutic context, there's so
Yeah.
much in touch therapy, isn't there, that we know
Yeah.
we need.
I think that it is um, an unfulfilled human desire a lot of times. I think we'd
Mm.
all be better off being a little more in physical contact with each other.
Well, I mean,
Um,
touch and desire are in relationship, aren't they? They are
of course, yeah, yeah, yeah.
the same.
Um, but I think there's also, for lack of a better word, platonic touching that I think is healthy too. Giving people hugs, giving somebody the elbow, bumping into the, you know what I mean? Like there's lots of things that are sort of familiarity. I don't know, not tests, but just sort of like pushing the boundary a little bit that ultimately can make two people closer than, you know, you and I have met before and spent a few hours together, but at the time I think you were sick, so I couldn't give you a hug at the end of it, even if you would give me a hug. Um, but it is funny. Yeah, it's all interesting.
I mean, touch doesn't last, does it? So what we have
Well, the
with touch,
memory of touch can last.
well, that's what I'm going to say is that we have
Okay.
memories of touch.
Yeah.
And in the
And
memories of touch, we also have, you know, the index linked to morality and to
yeah.
all the other things that condition who we are and what we do. I just want to mention the image that's on the screen now is by Rembrandt, and it's Joseph and Potiphar's wife. That story comes as a sort of fable about uh, loyalty.
Mm,
Joseph, sold into slavery by his brothers or his uncles, finds himself in the home of Potiphar, and Potiphar's wife makes sexual advances towards him, and
apparently, yeah.
he turns her down, and that wasn't because of a sense of kind of sexual morality as such. It was to do with his loyalty to Potiphar.
Yeah, which I think is realistic
Mm,
or reasonable. You were saying the memory thing is funny because there was a lyric that I said to a friend this morning. I was listening to this new Counting Crows record, and there's a section that says, "Then she kissed me without a thought and said, sometimes memories are all that we've got. So come on, boy, let's make some at the show." But it's the idea that like, she kissed me, and it's like memories are all that we've got. Like these moments of your life that you remember, a lot of them are tactile.
mm.
Your interactions with people.
I mean, can you plan to touch?
Plan to?
How far in advance does one plan to touch? One can
I
plan to
think
talk.
I think plenty of people think about that a lot. I think plenty of people do it spontaneously.
Mm.
I think that if somebody disappeared tomorrow, one of the things you'd miss with them is how they feel when you touch them.
Well, I mean, Tennyson wrote about that, didn't he?
Yeah.
Um,
So,
Break, Break, Break. He wrote about his friend. Talked about the touch of the vanished hand.
yeah.
There's such poignancy in that. We do all, I think, know that quite soon into our adult lives, don't we? A sense of loss because of once having been touched.
Yeah. I mean, every week when we used to go visit, we would visit my father-in-law who passed away, 6, 8 weeks ago. I would give him a kiss on the head before I
Mm.
left. And it's like, I remember what that feels like right now. Will I remember what it feels like in 20 years? Probably not. Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, touch also gives us a proximity to another person and everything else that comes with that. Again, that's why I'm sort of looking at touch as this standalone thing. When we touch, because of being close enough to touch, we are probably also smelling,
Yeah. Yeah.
even if we're not conscious of that.
Yeah. I think the a lot of them come with each other.
Mm.
By the way, I like how you used not only Michelangelo, not Michelangelo Buonarroti, but the whole thing in this one.
But sometimes I think people get a bit pissed off. If I was Michelangelo, I might be a bit like, come on now, my name.
More than just my name. Well, Caravaggio was a Michelangelo as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
So,
Anyway, isn't this one of the most famous and iconic images of touch? The
when you
creation
were
of
younger,
Adam?
did you see God and the angels as a brain? Do
Yes,
you
that's
see it that you did when you were a kid?
uh well, yeah.
I don't think I didn't notice that until later. I for some reason it just never I didn't look at it that way.
If anybody
It's like
doesn't
looking
know
at
what
the
we're actually talking about, Bill and I are actually eclipsing this on the screen just now a little. But God is kind of swathed in the fabric of a shape that resembles a brain, and the kind of muscular nature of the angels makes up the kind of
sort of the
bobbly bit.
folds of the yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, do you obviously intentional, but is it's not only giving man intelligence too, perhaps with life. Is that the implication?
Well, I just wonder if we are touched by God. Whatever that means to us, are we touched by God? Do we feel the hand of God stirring within us when we feel glad about our lives, when we give gratitude for our vitality or,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, yeah, you send me that thing. Oh, I'm touched, right? Yeah.
mm. Anyway, Bill, before too long, let's hug again.
Aha, so she says. I'm going to hold you to that.
You know that I'm not a hugger.
I know. That's why I'm going to hold you to it.
Bye, Bill.
Bye.